Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Papal, and this is the last episode of the prestigious Pope, meaning this is the last episode of the Papal AAR done by Daniel Tollman, who is one of the developers behind Victoria 3. We are in an interesting situation here. The Pope is having a good time, everything is looking good. I love all of the comments left, of course. Now let's just jump into this and check it out. Quick recap from last time. We have unified central Italy plus Lombardia, we have some semblance of a national budget despite our awful economic laws, and the world is generally on fire. I will say right here, and this just as an early hook basically, I personally feel of course that the world is way too much on fire and it's way too easy for the Papal States to expand, to do things without the greater powers caring. But let's be real, he wouldn't really have this easier time to expand if Austria wasn't on fire and Bavaria and France beat up Austria like crazy. So effectively, I mean, I think the game speed here is definitely a bit too fast, but well, that is because things just went pretty much right for him, right? Today's goal, Risorgimento, I don't think that's how we pronounce it. We're going to build an actual army and use it to unify all of Italy. As I noted yesterday, our integration of Lombardia gave us access to a very impressive arms industry, which produces cheap artillery and small arms. This is really interesting to me, because what we have right here is the fact that he didn't produce any artillery before he actually gained access to Lombardia. This means two things. First, it means that in the Austrian market, there is now a lack of artillery, because no longer are they producing this, but it also means that countries of his size, even if they have the tech, are very unlikely, it seems, to actually be producing artillery, unless they properly invest in that. We're going to be seeing that when it comes to two Sicilies as well. I thought we were fine with partial reunification, so now we're doing unification of all of Italy. I was, but then I achieved all my other goals. Looking at our barracks in Rome, we're not using the most up-to-date production methods available, so I switched from line infantry to skirmish infantry, which require the additional good ammunition as well as a greater proportion of officers in the ranks, so basically more educated people and just straightforward, of course, a bit of a higher cost because of the ammunition. I don't currently produce ammunition, but we don't need much, so I've opened an import route from France. We still only have 5 battalions. After annexing more of Italy, we are now up to 35. That is a number. 35 means you need at least 2 generals, you could even have more. I have also moved us from infantry focus to mobile artillery, so we're now actually using cannons. This production method, also inputs tools, which is not ideal because tools are much more expensive than our super cheap military goods. And in barracks, the government has to buy all of the input goods and pay all employees' wages. Armies like art are expensive. Yeah, indeed, he is now shifting gear, and I'll be honest with you, if the world wasn't on fire, I highly doubt that he could pull off what he's about to pull off this easily. How big is the city of Rome? Its urban center is the size 10, compared to Paris at 15 and London at 50. Typically Paris would be bigger by now, but AI France is having a bad day. We talked about that as well. The luxury furniture is going ham. But prestigious, armies are also prestigious, but much less so than art. We will see that his army is actually not giving him any prestige, but we're going to see that in a second. What is the correlation between urban center size and population? There's none. Urbanization comes from urban buildings. You could have millions of people in a state, but no urban center at all. Can a state have multiple urban centers? No, one per state. This is something that I wish weren't so, because it would ultimately mean that you couldn't really split the state without, you know, like, we talked about this previously, and we will always come back to this topic. Quite frankly, it's the one topic that really is on my mind all the time. But effectively, this means that if you were to split a state, yes, you can calculate where the population is actually working, whether it's urban or rural, because you know whether they are in the urban buildings or whether they are in the rural buildings. But since you only have one urban center, you can't split the urban buildings and then have 2 urban centers, you know? That is something that I wish weren't so, but I mean, this is, you know, it works. That is basically, they have a working system right here, and I have seen this in many other games, not just strategy games. Sometimes you need to make that decision. I really just wish it weren't so. But let's move onwards here. By the way, Milan and Florence are both larger cities than Rome, both at size 12, so we are very substantially increased in our urban population by integrating central Italy, so definitely benefiting from it, especially because he is accepting North and South Italians, making it so that he has an easy time actually governing these territories. And of course, this greatly affects the internal balance of power. Landowners are increasingly irrelevant, while the petite bourgeoisie, industrialists, and intelligentsia are highly relevant, because they just took the cities. Those cities, of course, are not landowners, and I have seen as well that the landowners are basically meant as sort of this class that slowly but surely gets phased out, because there will be other people that come when the industrialization starts. Updating our production methods has had a huge impact on the budget. Between salaries and military goods, we are down 10,000. Salaries are higher because we're now paying more officers instead of regular soldiers. He brought that up early with the production method. Deficit spending is fine, says Brett. Thankfully, we are still in the green. There's no deficit yet, and we still have a small gold reserve. So do keep in mind that The small gold reserve is basically something that is accumulated that you can work down. If you get to the top of that small gold reserve or of that whole gold reserve, then you're basically losing out on making money. So spending indeed in Victoria 3 is actually encouraged, which isn't the case in all of these games. Going bankrupt or going at least into the negatives is oftentimes bad, but here we're not even going into the negatives. That is how good it is going for the papal market. Taking a look at our military tech, things aren't great. Tech spread has generously given us a couple of tier 2 navy techs for our mighty armada of 0 ships. We haven't focused on a single military tech the whole game. Our only tier 2 army tech is logistics, which is actually a very important one because that unlocked skirmish infantry. That's pretty interesting to know because, of course, the logistics in this period, the logistics related to the army, but also to the infrastructure, so to the actual, railways, was pivotal. That was the vital part of winning wars in this period. This is true both for the war that the Austrians fought against France, not in-game, I mean, historically speaking, but also between the French and the Germans. Incredibly, incredibly important. Also between, the Germans, the Prussians, and the Austrians. And as you can see right here, this is, of course, connected directly to a production method. So I like that the logistics tech actually plays a bigger role here rather than just, I don't know, you get a small attrition bonus. Right now, I'm going to shift my research over to percussion caps. This will unlock ammunition plants, so I can make my own ammunition, and it will also unlock shrapnel artillery for my barracks. Very nice. I will also expand my barracks in Rome to allow another 5 battalions. Then I asked, how are you financing these expansions of your military? GDP, and therefore taxes, expanded a lot once I properly integrated central Italy. So, we are now looking at a situation where basically, we started out with very bad tax laws, and they are still fairly bad. We have some reforms, but if we look at it, if we compare it probably to the great powers, we probably are still significantly behind. And this is important because as good as it is going, I want you to put this into the framework of, pitting, for example, the papal army versus an army of an actual great power, the Ottomans, even the Prussians, the Austrians, maybe even in this completely devastated state, but I will say that this clearly seems as though the Papal States are very much still a paper tiger. Yes, 35 battalions is really nice. Yes, new production methods are really, really nice. But at the same time, they are barely covering their expenses of this new army, and they don't really have any other potential. So yeah, I will try to reaffirm basically that I think that he got very lucky here with how the world turned out, with how poorly the AI turned out, because otherwise this probably wouldn't have been possible. My GDP is now 15 million. Garibaldi is an artillery master. He is an exceptional general, and this will be felt, trust me. I've given Garibaldi a promotion so he can lead more troops at once, which of course applies a multiplier or modifier to these troops when they fight, meaning instead of just 10 getting it, now there are 20 getting it. Garibaldi is going to carry this. Is the Papal Army national militia, or are the warriors of God a professional army? Good question. Let's check our laws. Peasant levies. So what I want to mention is here, and I may be misremembering this, but I don't think I am, this army model does not give any prestige modifiers whatsoever to the Papal Army. I could be wrong. Let me actually look it up. Alright, so what I was thinking of was actually the national militia law. The peasant levies may give prestige. I'm actually not certain. It won't be as much as a regular army, but they may give prestige. But what I did read in the dev diary just now is that peasant levies are very, cheap, of course, during peace, but at war can be incredibly expensive. And of course, they give the land owners more power because, well, the peasant levies are, of course, commanded by the aristocracy. So this is basically still a feudal law right there. Interesting to know. Oh no, and since you've still got an economic law change going on, you can't alter this. Yep, I could cancel the economic law, but I really don't want to give up on my progress there. However, after that, I should actually be able to pass professional army quite quickly, as it has a lot of support, right? So people actually want it. I assume that maybe in particular the army itself, although they are no longer in government, still has a power base that will support this. Oh, well, this is a bug. Prussia formed Germany, despite absolutely not meeting the requirements. Bugs will happen, you know how it is. I definitely fixed this bug before Christmas, but the fix isn't in the stable build. Prussia hasn't gained any territory as a result. They're just a really small Germany. Cute, frankly. The British wars also have concluded. The British Republic and Ireland are now facing one another. Ireland is unified as a whole. The island is under one government. King Dennis Prendergast rules Ireland, while the British Republic is led by the intelligentsia under Thomas Barnes. What happened to Queen Victoria? Who knows? Dead? Abdicated? Exiled? She's not coming back regardless. We talked about this, of course, a couple of times. Wow, Britain has become incredibly progressive. They are a presidential republic with universal suffrage for men, right of assembly, freedom of conscience, and multiculturalism. Does this affect the UK's great power status? Down from number 1 to number 4. I mean, they lost all of the colonies. They lost their army, I'm absolutely certain. They lost the prestige given by the monarchy. I assume that there may have been something attached to that. And then they are, at the very least, in a position, I would argue, that could potentially attract a lot of migrants. We saw that, and I haven't covered it on this channel, but if you have seen the Upper Canada AAR that Daniel has also done, you will see that multiculturalism makes it so that you get a boatload of migration, which of course is very, very strong if you want to go ahead and actually have, you know, a rather increasing, or rather a large increase in your population size, because my god, the British Republic is, I think, the only country that may not be on fire at this point, right? Except Prussia maybe, but Austria is done, Spain, let's just assume that they are done, France is in a terrible spot, and then we have the Pope, I guess, but the British Republic is the only one actually accepting multiculturalism. Britain's colonial empire is down to Canada, Australia, and South Africa. And more importantly, who is number one? It's Russia. Have they been up to much? Well, St. Petersburg is being occupied by Sweden, but other than that, and he affirms that later as well, Russia just hasn't been really involved in a lot of chaos, whereas everybody else has been in chaos. Not that they are explicitly very good, they just aren't very bad in this playthrough. Oh, thank God we have organized sports. Taking a look at my rivals in Sicily and Sardinia, they are using much less advanced production methods. We might not have quantity, but we definitely have quality. We now have 40 regiments, Sicily has 50, and Sardinia has 37. We are greatly outnumbered. France alliance when? I literally just received an offer. Remember, France is not in a good spot, but they are still a great power, and that may be enough to actually win some wars here. Britain is in another civil war. There goes the opportunity for them to, you know, be this migration country. The petite bourgeoisie wants to restore the monarchy. France and Austria are going at it again as well. You know what? I doubt there's ever going to be a perfect moment to do this. The great powers are distracted at least. Let's pull the trigger on Sicily. I've started a diplomatic play. I've offered France a favor to join my side, even though they probably won't be able to commit much to the effort. The mighty armies of Württemberg are supporting Sicily. So we have Sicily and we have Württemberg here. Austria declared neutrality, that's good, and we have finally enacted agrarianism. It only took about a decade. I've changed up the government, the army is now in charge. Garibaldi is the prime minister to the Pope. Remember, he really wants to pass professional army, and having the army in charge that will become stronger because of the new law is good. So now actually financing the army, making them happy is the go-to move, and that is the interesting part here. You don't need to worry about any of that in Victoria 2 or in any of the other games. In Victoria 3, interest groups are really felt, and they're felt dynamically. Making these sort of choices is of course what will keep you busy for most of the game. So now, are you a constitutional theocracy or still an absolute monarchy? We're still an autocratic theocracy, right? So basically there is no parliament, there's nothing of this sort, and there is no king, there is the Pope. So it is an autocratic theocracy. He didn't have to give any of these things to the liberals that are all over the country, as he stated previously. This play is definitely going to escalate to war. Sicily does not want to be annexed. Where at least Sardinia is staying out of this, despite actually being allied to Sicily. Though they are being occupied by Austria, so that probably explains it. Yeah, this is actually... I don't disagree. Is he unifying the country very quickly? Yes, he absolutely is. He massively is. But everything is straight up just in his favor. He got so lucky that Sardinia and Sicily, who had roughly more than double his troops, aren't even actually going together into this war because, well, Austria is doing something right, and that is this time actually occupying Sardinia. Garibaldi is mobilized. He's standing at the Sicilian border just waiting for the order to advance. Due to Austrian and Sardinian inactivity, we have both numbers and technology on our side, as well as an exceptional general. This ought to go well for us. Wartime. A few battles have been fought, neither side is advancing yet, but we are tearing their army apart in casualties. They have no cannons at all, and we are using mobile artillery, and this is really interesting. I brought this up earlier. The fact that even if you are a middling power, even if you are fairly strong, you might end up with no cannons whatsoever. Is it necessarily historical? I mean, obviously not. Artillery played a huge role for everybody, but the idea here is that the core of your army is not actually benefiting from artillery because you don't have enough of that. Then on top of that, you have Garibaldi with his master artillery user ability, right? And all of a sudden, you have a complete disaster for the Sicilians, just being completely destroyed. And I love this. This is something that where you can look at, you know, what you have built, the army that you have created, and you will know how it will come out, or you can at least guess, and you can also win against, you know, larger numbers. Now, in this case, it wasn't necessarily something that we can actually see, since Sardinia is occupied, since Sardinia is not involved in this, but I would bet that he could have beaten both of them at the same time as well, because he had artillery, and he had, of course, a master general. You know, Garibaldi can carry this, but yeah, no, I love this about this system, that you actually have these material differences, and all of a sudden they go in and completely shred the enemy. Plus, Garibaldi is an expert with these things. War's over. That was very fast. Massive casualties caused their line to collapse, and we rolled over Naples with barely a fight. I think about 50,000 dead in total, mostly Sicilians. That's a lot. I guess that's what happens when you bring a gun to a cannon fight. Yeah, that really is what happens. How much infamy did you incur? Quite a lot. Many countries are very wary of our expansionism. Just out of curiosity, what's happening with the British Civil War at the moment? It escalated. Now the Welsh want independence as well. A GDP has grown from 15 million to 22 million just by annexing 2 Sicilies. That is quite nice. Let's take a look at what I actually gained here. How is the standard of living? Lower than before I annexed Sicily. Sicily, of course, quite rural, definitely not as optimized, definitely not with as much access into, for example, the French market as the Papal States, and yeah, I mean, that helps, but Sicily is a powerhouse. Don't mistake that. 2 Sicilies in this time period had the chances, had the opportunity to move on, but of course, with the government that they had, that never happened. Austria lost its war against France again. You can see that as well here. Actually, I'm not sure that I can see anything here. Oh, Venice is released. Right, hello, Venice. Venice has been released, and this is the long Papal States. And this is everything that he needs. Now, I do want to bring this up again. I know I've said this once at the very least, but I think he should be able to already form Italy, frankly. I think it should be totally viable without owning Venice, without owning Sardinia, Piedmont, so, you know, this region, and then Sardinia itself, to actually form Italy. Again, let's just recapitulate that Sardinia, Piedmont themselves founded Italy without holding Rome, but he will need all of these. I wish that they did this in a bit more, you know, maybe in a bit more granular, a more modular matter, where you can say, okay, we can forfeit this territory, or we can accept that this isn't part of it, you know, whereas in this case, he really has to hold all of that, or he can't call himself Italy. Either way, is Austria even a great power at this point? Technically, yes, but its rank has dropped. If it can't get its rank back up soon, it'll lose its great power status. So, does 2 Sicilies bring any interesting resources to the Papal realm? Lots of sulfur, yes. Also, our only natural coal deposit, though it's very small. They also bring the capacity for sugar plantations, which is not something we've had before. The British monarchy has been restored. This bodes poorly for the Welsh uprising. We also have access to the Sicilian navy. It's just 10 ships, but it's something. I mean, if you wanted to build a, you know, colonial empire, you definitely need these flotillas. We have so much sulfur, I don't even know what to do with it. I've put as much as I can into my paper mills. General WCJ asks, can you use it for fertilizer? That's one of several uses of sulfur, but we don't really have the tech to do much with it right now. Garibaldi has decided that he's a theocrat now. He really loves the Pope. Now, can he hand up the Pope? He cannot. Now researching intensive agriculture so I can find a use for this sulfur. Does the change in IG change the way he handles battles now as well? This is a question whether the political, you know, inspiration of a general is also something that reflects in the general's activities. Garibaldi's political views do not affect his performance in battle. Building sugar plantations and coal mines, expanding iron mines and glassworks. I'm taking some time to improve the economy. In the meantime, I'm improving relations with Venice, trying to annex them peacefully, of course. Just gonna speed 5 for a bit. Market looks stable and healthy. Could be a lot more productive if I care to optimize things, but I don't think I need to pay that much attention to detail for my goals, because of course he wants to end the playthrough once he is Italy. Do you need to get Venice into your market too? Just did that. Venice has joined the Papal States. How big is your population now? 20 million people live under the divine rule of the Pope, and more are coming. Large numbers of Dutch people are moving to Rome. He is, of course, fairly forgiving, although the Dutch, of course, are not exactly known for being Catholic, but maybe these are Catholic Dutch. Who knows? Can you form Italy now? I need 2 more states. I've begun the diplomatic play to annex Sardinia. So just look at this. He says 2 more states, and, well, Venice has been added. This is something that Italy didn't own until after World War I. And then this is one state right here. And then this is one state right here. So Sardinia and Piedmont. This isn't mandatory because historically this isn't something Italy owns. They gave it to France so that France would aid them in the unification wars. Meaning that he does need to own all of Italy, all of the Italy anyway when it was formed historically, if he wants to form Italy. Again, I wish there was some more modularity there. Just, you know, even if it gives me less prestige, if it gives me less bonuses, I would like something where I can at the very least declare myself Italy, to get a claim to this entire thing. But ultimately, I think the way the mechanics work, it probably wouldn't really make a difference, because as soon as you have nationalism, you could argue that that is you already declaring yourself Italy, because you can then, from how I understand it, you could then already declare a play to unify Italy, which basically you would only do if you want to be Italy. So in a way, I guess it's mostly an aesthetic wish that I have, but maybe not a mechanically relevant at all. Right, where were we? Bavaria now owns Styria. Austria no longer owns any of Austria. It seems like it should probably collapse then. I have no idea why Austria isn't just getting a lot of separatist movements, but they aren't. Hey, it's the version of the game. The great powers have elected to stay out of this. Austria hasn't actually declared neutrality, but I don't think they'll do anything. They're on the fence. Wales somehow got its independence, and here's the Duke of Wales, Duke Wyndham Montgomery Cunningham. He is a ruler, he is 30 years of age, he is a part of the armed forces, his popularity is neutral, he is meticulous, experienced political operator, and he is a Republican. Now, this is kind of interesting. Because it seems weird, and it is weird, that the ruler of a monarchy, which this is the Duchy of Wales, that the ruler of a monarchy would say, let's make a republic instead. But it's not unheard of. There are people that didn't really like, that despised the government form that they were in. And maybe he wants to push on for that, for the good of the people. Maybe he is a bit of a, friendly chap that just wants the best for his country. Who knows? Either way, yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be that often. We have seen a number of... I'm pretty sure that the Korean baby, the bearded Korean baby, if you remember this, I'm pretty sure the Korean baby was also Republican. Maybe it happens way too often for the leaders of actual monarchies. I wouldn't know, though, because, again, the game isn't out. War has begun. They are barely putting up a fight. Major advances in the first week, closing in on Turin already. Meanwhile, we just invaded Zurich, and Albanians are migrating to Tuscany. Some Sardinian troops tried to hold up in the mountains. Took some casualties, but we got them. Mopping up the last Württembergian holdouts. And here we go. Interesting. Request to join customs union. France does not want the Papal States to join the French market. They want to join the Papal market. Well, why not? Welcome, France, to the glorious Roman market. I don't even know what kind of impact this is going to have on the economy. The war's over, and one more quick restart, because I've noticed a unification bug that would prevent me from getting a cool event. Here is the conclusion of the after-action report. There are some comments underneath it I looked at. I asked him a couple of questions, his feedback on this run himself, and we're going to take a look at those, but let's read this event. Under the heroic leadership of Pope Gregorius Capellari, the Italian nation has been birthed into the world. Unified under a common banner, Italy will surely shape the future of Europe and the world. Yes, young men, Italy owes to you an undertaking which has merited the applause of the universe. You have conquered, and you will conquer still, because you are prepared for the tactics that decide the fate of battles. To this wonderful page in our country's history, another more glorious still will be added, and the slave shall show at last to his free brothers a sharpened sword forged from the links to of his fetters. That is a very war-driven, a war-minded statement there, in my opinion. But then again, he did really birth it in war. He unified a good chunk of it, but then conquered the other two large factions. And now we have a custom name here for a theocracy that rules Italy. The Kingdom of Heaven on Earth has been established. Honestly, I don't know whether the Pope would call it that. I don't know whether the Pope would ever unify Italy, but I like this one. I like this one a lot. The Kingdom of Heaven is a classic. When the Pope rules, then it shall be the Kingdom of Heaven on Earth. The year is 1852, so 16 years. We are the number 2 great power. The Pope's rule encompasses the entire Italian peninsula, and the Roman market extends as far as Normandy. Works of divinely inspired art adorn every wall. What needs to be said here is that I wouldn't worry about these numbers too much. I brought this up again, but you can be number 2 great power when France screws itself, when Germany gets a bugged out Germany formation, when Austria is bugged out, when the Ottomans aren't really doing much, they don't really have many opponents, Russia is just chilling, not doing anything, China is not doing anything, they collapsed, they completely imploded, the United States of America had various civil wars. Obviously, you're going to be number 2 great power. I don't think this is indicative of anything. So in 16 years, you won 2 wars, diplo-annexed 4 countries, and reformed your country. The last part is definitely some kind of fluke caused by France's absolutely trash economy, right? That is when France joined his market. So world conquest is very much possible. Italian unification is not representative of how quickly you can expand in general, because you have to consider here that he did annex a bunch of countries peacefully, and I don't think you can do that if you're not within one cultural area that wants to be nationally unified. I checked out the massive Roman market out of curiosity. Incorporating France has caused total havoc. Untangling this mess would take years. What do you even get for fixing the French economy? I'm sure I could find some way to make it worth in the long run, but in the short term, it's a gigantic headache. How did France joining ruin it? I wonder when it comes to playing the game, how it works with the markets. You can quite easily look at other countries' markets and see what they're consuming and producing, and compare that to your own market. If you think they're a good match, a customs union might be favorable, but I accepted France into my market without much thought, because I wasn't intending on continuing the game for much longer anyway. I want this, but I think they said that changing state religion is not possible. That's correct, though I would like to make a decision for Japan specifically to change state religion to Shinto. Right, this is something. Religion doesn't matter all too much. The countries for whom religion does matter, like the Ottomans, for example, shouldn't be able to change it. I'm not very concerned about religion not being changeable. I think it doesn't really matter. The government, the ideology, the leading interest groups, that is much more important. Our market's still state-based. A state region can only have one market. This is determined by which country has the largest state in the state region. With said, they're going to change it. I hope they will. I would really, really love it. Does it work? I mean, clearly in this playthrough we've seen that the system that they have does work, but hey, it's just kind of odd to have Parma join you and they can't join you with their market because they're stuck in the same market, not because of a power dynamic, but because of a state region, right? Yeah, I mean, can't I irritate Irish Catholics enough to make them migrate? Irish Catholics don't want Britain to adopt Catholicism. They want Ireland to not be a part of Britain, right? He's declaring the difference here between wanting power in your state and wanting not to be in your state. Can a country be in a different market at once? Some of your states might not be in your national market if they are split states, and another country has a larger state in that region. Yeah. I'm just looking around the world, seeing how other countries are doing. Britain has 10 million radicals out of 25 million citizens. I'm not surprised they're in constant civil wars. The USA are completely bankrupt. Russia, though, is politically and economically stable. They got to #1 world power largely by not doing anything stupid, while the world burned around them. Tuva is ruled by a naked man and has maxed out gold reserves. I don't know either. I don't know either. 8,000 Welsh people live on Corsica. More disconcertingly, 250,000 Dixie people live in Missouri. There was never a time when I was happy with the papal economy. Our laws were really bad, and I wasn't able to reform them to any great extent. I just barely made things work with what I had. Consider this statement and the fact that everybody else went down the gutter. If they didn't, his economy, his market would have been completely different. His pops right now are very strong because they were able to sell stuff to the French market, because the French market wasn't producing anything because Paris was completely gutted. If that wasn't the case, this playthrough wouldn't have been this simple, this easy, this fast. Games before release are never considering balance in this fashion. The fact that it runs as stable as it does, at the very least, even if it's not balanced, does sound to me like maybe release isn't as far as I thought. I am at this point, in this moment, you know, personally, I'm hoping for like May, June, maybe something like this. Maybe. I have no clue though. But hey, if the game runs this stable, sounds pretty good to me, right? What would you do differently looking back? Probably include the Pope's IG in government at all times, right? It probably would have been better to put real effort into industrializing and building an economic base, which would have promoted the IGs I needed to do faster reforms. But instead, I rushed arts academies. Was the Great Power Station worth it? Not really. I was a paper tiger. I did it because it was cool, not because it helped me. I didn't even have an army until after I became a great power. Great power helps in all kinds of diplomatic ways. It's far from worthless, but it was not the optimal use of my economic resources to devote the entire country to producing art. I like that it's viable, although this is a completely bonkers playthrough, but we learned a lot here, I think. Great power status prestige spam is viable, but it's not nearly as worth it as it would be in Victoria 2, for example. So I am happy with this huge conclusion for this AAR. Obviously, yes, a lot is unbalanced, a lot, you know, bugged out, a lot didn't work right, but when it comes to the concept, to the design idea behind what great powers do, they are no longer nearly as necessary as in Victoria 2, where you needed to even have your own market, or rather, yeah, I mean, be safe in your own market and build it larger by having spheres of influence. So this is really good news to me. It's better to earn great power rather than game it. I like that. This is definitely true. You definitely can force it through art spam like I did, but being a great power in name only is not usually beneficial. I was still economically and militarily weak. So then, what benefits do ranks confer, right? What I posted there basically was the explanation for what ranks do. I just gave you that as well. It was certainly nice to be able to maintain improved relations with all of the Italians that I wanted to integrate, as well as the great powers who might make things difficult for me. It helps, but it wasn't what carried him. It wasn't even necessary to actually form Italy. So that is quite nice. I'm a big fan. I like this after-action report a lot. I hope so did you. I hope you like the analysis, the discussion. I love reading your comments under these videos, as always. Next week, at least, hopefully, the Victoria 3 Dev Diaries will be back, similar to the CK3 Dev Diaries, and we are surely, steadily, even maybe slowly, but we are making our way towards, you know, hey, more features, and maybe at some point a release announcement. I would really love it, but hey, I don't want to rush it either. I don't know, it's a gut feeling, right? Maybe it's going to be May, maybe it's going to be June, maybe it's going to be 2026. Who knows, right? Maybe it comes out after Elder Scrolls 6, which would be horrible. Either way, thank you for watching. I will see you in the comments, but for the moment, later, alligator.